So here's our plan of attack. We're going to dig into the form layout, which probably you might feel the most comfortable with at this point if you've played with Droplet a bit. But we're going to kind of start from scratch because that's the most,
Perfect.
that's where we can get the most out of this training. Then we'll get into workflow. Workflow sounds scarier than it is, I promise. It's very visual. You really don't need to know any coding in order to design a workflow or a form layout for that matter. And then we'll talk about visibility, which means at different steps or different points in the workflow, who can see and do what. That's really all that visibility means. Notifications, those are email notifications that trigger all throughout your workflow. And then we'll wrap up by testing and publishing. We're going to make a reimbursement request form in this video.
Okay.
And the goal is at the end of this hour to actually have a working Droplet form. Now, of course, you'll have to customize if you may not even be building a reimbursement request form. But no matter what you make, you'll have to customize it to fit your own district's needs. So that's the plan. I'm going to swipe. Can you see my screen when I swipe like this?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I kind of have the reimbursement form that we're going to recreate as a PDF on the left, and we're going to make it on the right. So we're going to start with form layout. And these are the things that I kind of want to make sure I hit. So I'm just going to have my little outline right there. And we'll come back and forth to this presentation, but let's just start with making a new form. How's the builder look? And then we'll start building this sample reimbursement form here. So the first thing you're going to do is log into Droplet. When you click on your home screen, you might see something that looks like this. You can either create a new form by clicking this button here, or if you go to the forms page, there's also a plus form button here. They both do the same thing. Gives you options. You can start from a blank form, which is what we'll do today. You can also pick a Droplet template. We've got a lot of templates that are so well designed, and I know this because I designed them all. Shameless plug for templates. If there's a form that you already like that's maybe most of the way there, you can duplicate an existing form. Or you can import what we call a DRPLT, which is like Droplet, a Droplet file. So maybe you're talking with another district in the area that uses Droplet. We've got a ton of California districts that use Droplet. You can actually export your finished, form files and share them with each other, and you can import them that way. But we'll start with a blank form. And this is kind of what you see when you get in. We give you just the absolute bare basics here. The submitter name and the submitter email are the only two required fields on a Droplet form. But we'll kind of get into the exact components here. You can move back to the forms page here, but you could also give your form a title here. So I'm going to make this match what I see on the left here. So I'm just going to call it reimbursement form. And that's it. If you ever want to change the title of the form, you can just change it right up there as well. Along the top, we have this kind of form view. Pretty soon, we will get to this workflow view here, or this layer, which will show you the workflow canvas. You've got some other options in here. So you can edit the form details, share it. Once you have it published, you can share it here. There's that Droplet file I was talking about. A couple other things like translations and the code builder. And when you're ready to publish, which we're not yet, this would be a terrible form if we're just, so tell us your name and email, send. You would hit that publish button there. On the left, you have all of the components that you can use to build your form. We've kind of broken them into the most common is like the basic. Then we have some layout components, and then we have some more advanced components down here. To add a component, you just click and drag it on, and you can kind of see this little blue line is going to indicate where it will go when I let go of my mouse. And so to put on like an input here, I could just let go and it's going to add an input field to my form. Now, once you have a component selected, this right side panel is all of the properties or the settings for that particular component. So here I have the label, and that's what shows up above the actual input. I could change this to be something like, well, employee name, maybe employee email. Maybe I want to do that up here. So just pick this one and change this to employee name. I can also change the width. You can kind of think of droplet forms as having 12 columns that you don't really see. See how this is at 6 and it's taken up about half of the width of the form.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to make that 4, and that's going to shrink it down. I could go really extreme, or I could go kind of full width with 12. Here, I'm going to match this to be, employee name, employee email, and school. So that's quick math, 3 sets of 4. I'm actually going to delete this one because I probably want to use an options component for the school here. So if you ever add a component and you need to get rid of it, there's this delete icon in the bottom right corner. There's also a duplicate icon if you're adding a bunch that you like that are pretty similar to each other, but I'll delete that one. And I'm going to bring in maybe a drop down. So I can just drop that in. Now it's going to default to 6, but I can change it to 4. And now it puts it all on one nice line. And I'll call this school. Now within the properties, almost every single one of our properties has just this simple toggle of, is it required or not? Does the submitter have to fill this out? To make it optional, you just toggle it off. That's it. They default to being required. And so that's good. You're never going to build a form and think that something's required and it actually isn't. Different types of components have different properties. So if you look at like this input property, this actually has like specifically input settings where if I click on this drop down, now I've got like different properties because it's a totally different component. Here I'm going to add to my list of options these schools here. So I'll just put in Meadow Elementary, Fields Middle, Marsh High. And if I didn't need any of these, I could delete them here and I can add more as well. Okay, great. Other things that I want to call out, in fact, let me just slide back over. So we've talked about how the builder is laid out. We're getting into components and properties. Field IDs. This is at the bottom of your properties panel for every component that you have. And when you add one, Droplet just gives it just a generic ID. See how it says here, drop down 1. It's best practice to make this something that's a little more descriptive. So in this case, it's school. So I can click this pencil icon and I can name this school. And the reason why I want to do this, and maybe it's separate from what the label or the name is because this is like a unique identifier for every component on your form. Whenever you want to like reference, let's say in formulas, or maybe you want to like mail merge in certain values on the form into an email, you're going to use that field ID to kind of reference whatever the user has picked from this list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Field IDs are a little strange to describe, but yeah, a couple other things just to mention before we kind of just build this form layout here. And this I found a lot of success with in my district. These little kind of like context clues here. There's this details area that's called a hint and tooltip. A hint is something that says like, puts text underneath the input. So what is your school? Or very often, if something is not required, I would type the word optional underneath there. Just call out the fact that it's not necessarily required. And then a tooltip is really similar. So when I type like the word optional here, you see how it's added a question mark next to the label? When
Yeah.
your users hover over it, it'll show kind of like a little context, which I found was really helpful, especially when, good example, HR would say, Nick, we always get calls about this one question here. And so what we did was we would just answer the question right there before it became a phone call or an email. So I would look for like little ways where you can use these tooltips and hints to kind of provide just additional context. Obviously, something like school, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So we won't put one there, but let's keep going. So we have category. This is for reimbursement. So maybe they're picking from supplies, travel, professional development, and other. We could put in maybe a single choice component. Now I can drop this here and it's just going to keep wrapping down to the next row. Or let me bring that back on. The layout editor kind of gave me two options. I could put it here or I could put it here. And the difference there is kind of minor. If I drop it here, it's going to add it to a new section of the form. If I drop it here, it'll keep it in the same section. Most often, honestly, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. So I'll drop it here. And I'm going to kind of set up the same thing. I'll put category here. Category. And then we can put supplies, travel, professional development. And I'll add an option here for other. Okay, now I've got specify other, which I only want to show up if they select other. So check this out. I'll put specify other. Ooh, and by the way, let me make sure I've got my IDs going. Specify other. Field IDs can't have spaces in them. If you try to type a space, it just won't let you. But check this out. If I go to specify other, well, I only want this to show or hide in certain situations. So I clicked on this show or hide field under rules, and it's giving me this little builder where I'm essentially coming up with a rule or a set of conditions. So here I want this field only to show up when the following occurs. And I can choose a component. In this case, I want this only to show up if the category is other. Apply rule. Now I have this little purple thing indicating that I have a rule applied. And let's go and preview it. So there's a preview button in the top. You can see that that doesn't show up when the form loads. And if I pick supplies, or travel, or professional development, or other, well, now specify other shows up because it's met that condition. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Expense date. Let's add that in. That'll be a date time picker. It's probably the best way to do that. Expense date. With date time, you have the option to just include a date or a time or both, and then we also have a month picker too. In this case, it's just a date, and it's going to default to date, so that's great. And we can call this expense date, just to keep everything consistent across the board. How are we doing so far?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We're just going to cruise right down the rest of this. I chose a relatively short form, so we don't have to do too much repetition. Here, I want this amount. It says if the category isn't travel. So I'm going to bring on an input. And I'm going to put it at a width of 4. I'm going to call this amount. With input fields, which are the most common, we can actually change this to be an email, or a number. But if under text, we have these options to mask it, which means it almost kind of forces a certain type of information for the user to enter. Could be a phone number, could be dollars. In this case, that makes the most sense since this is an amount, an expense amount. So, but Social Security, just the last four of Social Security, and you can apply your own custom mask too. But I'm going to put dollars on this one. And I could even put a guide, which will kind of show the dollar sign and then a blank, period, blank, blank. Again, makes it super here. Let me preview this. See how it popped in I just typed 5.00, but it pops in the dollar sign for you when you start to type. Another thing you could do here is add placeholder text. So you could put in a dollar sign there. Now if I preview it, there's a dollar sign in there. So they get the idea they don't have to type a dollar sign. It's the little things, honestly. It truly is the little things that I've found make a difference. Okay, great. So we only want this to show up if the category isn't travel though. So I'm going to apply another show hide field rule here. And I'm going to say to show if the category is not travel. Because the idea here is that they're not expensing something, they're going to be reimbursed for miles traveled, right? So we'll get a different amount from that. And then let's just add in a description. We could maybe use a text area for this. Set it to be 8. With the text area, I have different settings. So I can shrink the number of lines. I have the same idea with these rules here. Again, can have, placeholder text, hints, tooltips, and then let's make this description. Okay. So far, so good. I want to add a section here that's for mileage. So if they do pick category, I want a whole section to appear. So I'm going to bring in, actually, when I go and add an address, which is down toward here, I'm going to drop it where there's a complete line here. That's like starting a new section. And you can kind of see in the lower left-hand corner here, I can expand this up so you can see it a little better. There's this layout tree is what we call it. And so everything that I've added to the form so far is kind of in an outline here. And I can click on any of these things and it's going to kind of show me as if I had clicked on the properties. Or I can reorder, I can drag entire sections of the form up higher in the form. But for this, the reason why this matters is because I can have a whole grouping of components that will show up in this case when they've selected travel. So I've got a couple things: starting address, ending address, the miles, and the mileage reimbursement rate. So here we go. I'm going to pick on this address and rename it starting address. I can leave that address 1, that's fine. And then because I'm just doing the same thing, I can duplicate this component and name it ending address. And it just defaulted it to address 2. Fine by me, doesn't really matter a ton. The next thing I want to do is calculate a distance between these two addresses. And so we have a component that's called measure distance, which is like the coolest thing. Although I'm a nerd, so take that with a grain of salt. So let me drag on this measure distance. The way this one works is you pick the start and the end address fields. And so this will be really easy because we only have 2 address fields on here and it's a starting and ending one. So let me show you what this does. I'm going to preview this. It's already got 0 miles in there. I'm going to put in, let's say, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And then I can put in an ending address And I can search for this. What's the address of your district office?
401 Nut Tree Road, NUT space TREE.
Nut tree,
N-
NUT.
Oh, not-
NUT.
that makes so much more sense.
Yep, there you go, right
There
there.
we go. So now it's just going to auto calculate the shortest driving distance between these two
Dang.
axes. Which is nice because then I don't necessarily have to have someone attach Google Maps or some other printout. I can have them put in a starting and ending
This will need to
address.
change theirs because we have to update our Google map.
Oh yeah, yeah. If are you saying like you have a data set of distances between common locations in Vacaville? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could still use that. This is just a new kind of new.
No, I like that. Yours.
This is
So much easier.
isn't it? It's so much easier, and they're not always. Sometimes they're traveling to an out of district location.
Yeah.
And so now you have this almost like this field that you can do some math with. So what we're going to do is calculate, well, how much should they get based on the number of miles that they traveled. So for that, we're going to use another advanced component called a computed component, which is kind of just like a formula. And maybe I can make this the same width so that they look nice. And I'll call this mileage. Oh no. Let's make it wider because that looks terrible. There we go. Hey, and it lines up with starting address, so that's good. So here we can give this an ID of reimbursement, maybe. And with computed components, we just have the ability to add in a formula. So this is right now a little bit of code, but we do have essentially ChatGPT right up here in the pink. So you can just describe in plain language what it is you want to do. Yeah. So you can say multiply the distance by 70 cents. In fact, we can just do that as a number, 70. Great. And so it's just going to multiply. It's putting in a little bit of code for you. You can hit apply rule. In fact, I think it's thinking that distance is a currency. So let me pull that out. And then I'll hit apply rule. And then we can preview it. So it's 401 Nut Tree Road in Vacaville. And I'll just find some other, maybe the center of town. So 2.9 miles. Based on that, it means that they're going to be getting $2.03 reimbursed. We can also add a dollar sign to this. So we have a number of helper functions. One of them is to currency, which you can put at the beginning, almost like it's like a Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets formula. They're really similar. But to currency will take the result and we'll just format it as currency. 401 Nut Tree. To Vacaville. Looks much better. But we only want this entire section, this whole section here, to show if the category is travel, because if they're putting in a reimbursement for supplies, why would they be putting in addresses? So let's add a rule to this whole section. And we'll have it show when the category is travel. Apply rule. If we preview it, now this kind of all makes sense. If they say supplies here, expense date's going to ask them for a date, the amount there, $5. But if they pick travel, notice that amount went away. And instead, we're going to have this used as the amount here. Description, we can do some formatting here. I'm a big stickler for making sure things look nice. But professional development, we'll bring that back in, and then other will require them to specify what they're looking for. Cool. All right, we're almost done with the layout.
Mileage rate is. It's formulated into the.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
Remember he put the 0.7. She was asking how they know what the mileage rate is.
Mhm.
Just so you know, you put it in the,
Yeah, I put it right in the
Right,
formula
so
there.
right there,
Okay. Oh, I see.
0.787.
Okay.
Yep. And now that's one thing. So like, you know, very often school districts will pull this out as a value, like a computed component, let's say, that just has that number in it. That way on January 1st, when that rate updates, you just have to go and change that one little box.
Okay.
Instead of hunting through formulas for
Right.
this.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's lots of ways to customize this to make it more kind of foolproof over time. Okay, so attach agenda. We're going to add in just a file upload file or a file upload component. I tend to want to make these a width of 12, just personal preference. And we can call this attach PD agenda. Now, this would only make sense if the category was professional development. So I'm going to have this show if the category is professional development. Last little bits here, and then we're going to move on to workflow, is 3 signatures, and then we're good to go. And so signatures are right up here. We'll drag these on. Whoops. If you ever make a mistake, you can hit Control Z to undo. I promise I did not purposely make that mistake to talk about that little tip. But we can bring on 3, whoops, see, I'm doing it a lot. 3 signature components. They come pre-wired with this date sign that will show up when the signature is populated. So we'll call this department head signature. This one is principal signature. And here's the finance signature. Okay. Now, then we have our actions buttons. You have the ability to toggle on save, which will give your users the ability to save their progress. Let's say they want to start filling something out. This is good for like timesheets. They want to start filling something out, but they don't want to submit it yet. They can save it and it'll be attributed to their Droplet account. In this case, maybe it doesn't make sense. And so I think that's it for the form layout. It looks pretty good to me. We've got expense date, amount, the name, the email, our school with the drop down. We have a couple things that are happening. If it's travel, it's going to do some address work. If it's PD, it's going to ask you to attach an agenda. And if it's other, it's going to have them specify what would be other. Now, of course, they would not be signing these. So when we get to visibility, we'll talk about like how to make these show up at the right moment for the right person. But for right now, I think our layout looks pretty decent. Oh, let's add a logo. Let's put on an image. I have somewhere public schools. Here we go. Once you have this kind of set up, you can control its width and its size. And then you can drag on some text right next to it, maybe. Let's make that 8. And you can make this a heading. Not mileage reimbursement, but just reimbursement form. And you can adjust the margins. So maybe 20. So it's kind of lined up. And let's move this off to the side. Now it's looking pretty good. In my district, we would put instructions right underneath here just to teach people when they have to submit it and what it's for. Obviously, a reimbursement form is pretty self-explanatory. Cool. Okay, so I think we covered all of this in the form layout area. Let's move on to the workflow piece, which is, like I said, maybe the scarier part, just because you're building how this submission is going to move when somebody hits submit, but it's not too bad. So we'll talk about the concept of steps, statuses, assignees, how to add a step, and then setting up rules for the workflow, which is how does it move? Maybe you want to skip a step if maybe a step doesn't make sense to actually run. So for this form, I kind of sketched out, and my department would actually do this on a whiteboard in district office. We would say, all right, this is how we want this thing to go. We want it to start here, and if it's supplies, we want it to go to a department head. If it's not supplies, we want it to go to a particular principal. No matter what, though, finance will be dynamically assigned based on how expensive this reimbursement is. And then any of these 3 blue steps should have the ability to reject it. But if it gets through, obviously, hopefully it goes to completed if it's all good to go. So in Droplet, we're going to build essentially this right here. And the way to do that is to navigate over to workflow. Now this gives you just kind of like a big wide open canvas. You can click and drag and move around. So it's kind of like you're laying out exactly what I have here. When you start building a workflow in Droplet, this is the simplest workflow you can possibly have, which is somebody hits submit and it immediately moves to the completed step. Done. In this case, I want to insert some steps. So we'll do that in just a second. I want to tell you about kind of how these workflow steps work. These are almost like train stations, and the submission stops at each of these if it's meant to. These are called transition lines, and you can click on these and delete them. You can break them if you want. If you didn't mean to do that, you can undo, and it puts it right back. You can draw lines to add another workflow step if you click and drag from one of these nodes here. You can then delete a step if you added it accidentally. You can move these steps around, so you can space them out so it kind of looks like in your mind how this thing should work. I tend to just think of these in like a linear from left to right. This is how this is going to go. So let's go and add this department head step. I can do that a couple ways. Probably the easiest way would be to click on this existing line and to hit this insert step button. And that's going to kind of wedge in between the start and completed step, a new step. This just gives it a default label, but I can overwrite it and call it department head. Now this is its status. And that matters for managing submissions. When you're on the all submissions page, you'll see those statuses as different colors.
Yeah.
Might be familiar with that. Primarily 3 statuses: in progress, completed, or rejected. I could change this from completed to in progress, but most often you want to have a completed step. So I generally just kind of shift this further down the workflow and add other steps that are defaulted to in progress. And then the other thing is that any in progress step in Droplet should have an assignee. You might be aware of this, but one of Droplet's main limitations is that any one workflow step has to have one email account associated with the assignee on that step. So here I can put in somebody fake just for the sake of this demonstration. In fact, I have these options. I have someone based on the form. So it could be a name and email based on what's been submitted on the form. It could be somebody outside of Droplet entirely. Like imagine you're doing a field trip request form and you want to assign this to the transportation company that's not even a Vacaville employee. You could have them involved in the workflow without giving them a Droplet account. And then the third dynamic option is whoever started the form. So the person that initiated it, the submission creator. So I'll put in somebody fake. I have chemistry names that pop up. Jessica Chlorine. Jessica.chlorine@droplet.io. So Jessica's maybe the department head in this case. Of course, the department head is going to change based on which department is chosen, but we don't have a department on our form. So if that's something that you want to do, you could add a department drop down and have that show up.
Yeah.
If the category is supplies, it would go to that person's department head. Otherwise, it's going to go to that person's principal. So let me add in another workflow step that would kind of be in tandem here to match our workflow. This is principal. So here, the submission will transition this way if the type, like the category of this reimbursement request, is not supplies. Then we can have that go back up that way. How you doing so far?
Good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we can use Adrian Watterson here as our principal. And again, most often these are going to be dynamically set. For the purpose of this kind of intro to Form Builder, we're going to keep it a little straightforward, but most often districts would do that. Okay, let's insert our finance step here. So I can insert step. And I'll just have to break some of these connections. So I can delete this connection and instead send it there. And again, how you lay this out is totally up to how your brain works. But that looks pretty similar to what we have in our drawing, doesn't it? Good. And let's put somebody else here. Daniel Neptunium. Man, you thought this was going to be a nerdy training this morning just because it was going to be a form builder training, but then chemistry was involved. And we just took the nerdiness to a whole new level. So real sorry about that. Okay, so we have our workflow kind of built out. If you want to go in and edit anything about the step, when you click on a workflow step, you get these options where you can edit the step, you can add notifications, or you can delete the step altogether. If you click on edit a step, it's going to give you all the same kind of options that you see on that little card, but it also gives you more. So there are rules for moving to the next step when someone hits submit. So let me actually X out of here. I think there's something that we're missing. It's these red dotted lines. So the department head, the principal, and finance should have the ability to reject, but we don't have a rejected step on here yet. So the way to add a rejected step is to click and drag from any of these rejection nodes. And so we can bring that down and call this rejected. And I can do the same thing for department head, bring that down and connect it, principal, bring that over and connect it. So now any of these three reviewers have the power to approve it and send it on, or have the power to stop it dead in its tracks and just send it right to this rejected step. I'm going to leave both of these unassigned because there's nobody here that's meant to do anything with them. You have the ability to assign someone, but it doesn't really make too much sense because that's an ending of that submission. It's just meant to be either, oh, the result was it was completed or it's been rejected. And then I have this idea of, well, how do I know which direction this is going to go based on what's been submitted? So I need to tell this start step how to send this. You know, is it going to go to the department head or to the principal? And what we've figured out is that only for supplies will it go to the department head. Otherwise, it will go to the principal step. So I'm going to go into edit step on the start. And you can see this area that says set rules to move to next step. Now, the way that this works is when someone hits submit, you're going to tell Droplet where it goes next. And it will do this. It will like evaluate these rules in order from top to bottom. So we can click into this transition to department head. Very similar idea here. Navigate to certain workflow steps under conditions you set. So when submitting, let's navigate to the department head when the category is supplies. And then I can apply the rule. If no other rules are met, This is a really key point. If no other rules are met, meaning the category is not supplies, it'll always kind of fall back to transition to the principal. You can certainly add like when category is not supplies here, but it doesn't make sense to do that. Let's say down the road you add something to this list of categories. You know, it's possible you introduce situation there where Droplet doesn't know who to send it to if you have rules for every situation. And that's not a fun day. Although in that case, when category is not supplies, it would still essentially always default to going to the principal. So that's good. We can save that and exit out. Other than that, these are always going to transition to the finance step when the principal or the department head hits submit, because there's only one submit pathway there. Great. Okay, so I think that might be it. We talked about transition rules. Oh, run step rules. So it's possible maybe there's a situation where the finance workflow step should be skipped. Gosh, it could be that if the submitter is the finance director, or if the submitter is somebody who's like a central office administrator or a principal, when you go into edit step here, you have this add rule for using this step. And the way this works is you can skip or run the step based on certain conditions too. And so I would say probably the most common example of this could be, well, maybe it's got to go to finance. Maybe it will run the finance step if the amount here is, let's see, mileage reimbursement is greater than, I don't know, $500. Let's just use that as an example. So that means if somebody's submitting a run-of-the-mill mileage reimbursement, 500 actually seems kind of high. Maybe 100 makes a little bit more sense. But if someone's submitting a mileage reimbursement that exceeds $100, it could be that that's the only situation where you'd want to run that finance step. Somebody's got to take a look at it in that case. So I'm not going to add that here. In this case, we want finance to see all of these. Okay. Let's move along. The next little bits are shorter, so fear not. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's talk about visibility and editability. With this, we're going to come right back to this workflow page to test it. But for visibility, we're going to go to the form and then click on visibility. And this is where you can configure who can see and do what. Looks kind of similar to the builder, which is why they're so close to each other. But what you'll see on the left here is just the layout tree. You'll see your form canvas. And then you'll also see your steps. So the start step. This is in the order that we've added them, by the way. So it says completed, but it's not the order in which it would happen. When you click on the start step, you'll be able to see everything that the person can edit in the start step. And if you click on, for example, the department head signature, we wouldn't want the person that's submitting their own reimbursement form to sign off as the department head. So in this case, we probably want them to not see that at all. This third column is to hide that component. The middle column is just to read only, so they can see it, but they can't edit it. And then, of course, it defaulted to being able to edit it. So maybe for these, I just want them to see that they might need those. Or I could take this entire section and say, hey, let's hide all the signatures on the start step. They're not going to be signing it. They don't need to see the signatures anyway. We're good to go. Now, on the department head step, I want them to be able to edit this department head signature component. So I'm going to put that as editable, but the principal and the finance department cannot edit that department head signature step. Also notice that the department head can see everything that the employee submitted, but can't actually edit anything. You could make them edit it, but not really it's not really form building best practice to allow them to change the initial request. So we'll do the same thing. The principal signature on the principal step should be editable. The finance signature on the finance step should be editable. That's kind of it for visibility. Best thing to do would be to preview this. So you could go to preview and it will show you that on the start step, all the signatures are gone, which is good. That's kind of what you want. But what if you want to preview it as somebody that's on a later step? We'll get to that in just a second. Next thing is about notifications. And then testing and publishing will be kind of the last thing that we discuss. So let's pop back to the workflow. And on each of these steps, you can see there's this envelope card with a number next to it. And if you click on that, it'll bring you to adding email notifications. Now, every single workflow step has a default kind of assignment notification, meaning if somebody was assigned to this step, they'd be getting this email. The default Droplet email is new submission awaiting your review. Hi, this is a merge field, recipient first name, initiated by full name, submitted a request that's awaiting your review, and here's a link to review the request. This is fine, but it's kind of standard. And honestly, in my district, some employees would call me and say, is this a phishing request? Is someone trying to steal my information? So I really recommend you customize this. You say something like, new reimbursement request submitted, something like that. You can pop in your district's logo here. You can edit the text, but it's a good idea to leave this link so that they can just click on something and get right to it. You can also add your own custom notifications. So maybe at this department head step, I might want an additional notification to go to Jessica's assistant. So I could add Jessica's assistant. So although it's assigned to Jessica, maybe Jessica is like notorious for not getting to her Droplet assignments. So you could say like, hey, Jessica has a Droplet to review. And again, you can put in some body text there.
Yeah.
Don't mean to throw Jessica under the bus, but
We were gonna give you a different name.
yeah. Everybody's got one.
Yep.
Everybody
Yeah,
at least has
yeah.
one.
We have one. We have a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. In my district, it was our sped director. She was just
Imagine that.
Ours too.
yeah, just
Jeez.
notorious for. Whew. But now you can see that there's 2 notifications. So this is a quick way to see, kind of a global level, how many notifications are going out. Really common to add notifications when something's completed. So cool. You can also add notification send rules. So let's say, for example, on that notification to Jessica's assistant, maybe we want to add a rule so that we can say, all right, when the step begins, send this message when the following occurs. Maybe it's, the category is one of these. If it's supplies or travel, you could set up conditions or situations in which a notification will send. And if it doesn't meet those conditions, it won't send. So this is a nice way of kind of looping in folks. I mean, you could have a notification that's sent to maybe your CFO if the overall request amount reaches a certain threshold. So really cool ways to kind of set those up. And when you have them set up, just like any other rules in Droplet, kind of shows you this purple purple thing that you can get a quick preview of what is set up as that rule. Okay, now my favorite part, we've done all this. Let's now test the form and then publish it. So I want to show you something really cool. In fact, for this, I'm going to expand the whole window. When you're in workflow, there's this little button up here that says test. If you click it, it will put your form and your workflow next to each other. And so you can simulate, you can kind of see the whole thing that you just built and pretend to fill out an example submission. So let's do this. I'm going to submit one for myself. I'm going to pick Meadow Elementary, and this is for supplies, and the expense date's today. It's for, I don't know, $125. And it was for a banner for National Honor Society induction. I can then hit submit, and you can watch it move through the workflow. My notes say pause for applause. Thanks, Robin.
Got you.
So now here I am as Jessica. See how this is highlighted and it says step department head assignee Jessica. So this is what Jessica's seeing. So now Jessica can say, oh, this looks great. Jessica. Notice it didn't go to the principal because this was for supplies. So if I hit submit, it now moves right along to finance.
Wow.
Finance can say, yep, sounds good. Oh, this is Daniel, right? And then he can hit submit and we're all done. But you can back up here and hit start. It'll bring you back here and you could test any other variation of what this might look like. Maybe it's travel. So here, this might say, you know, traveling to a conference. Starting address was 401 Tree. And we were going to the center of town. Submit. Now, do you see it move to the principal? Because it was not supplies. It's the little things. It's the little things. Now here, it's still got Jessica's signature because, you know, we're kind of going back and forth with the same submission. But in this case, Adrian would want to weigh in as the principal. He could hit submit. It then would go to finance, and he could hit submit. I should also mention that there are these reject buttons that show up because the principal, department head, and finance steps all have a rejection pathway. So they could hit reject, in which case they'd have to type a reason. And when they hit done, it will move to rejected. So this is a really, really good way of making sure that this thing is going to move exactly how you want it to. The last little thing that I want to show you about this is, let's say as you're testing this, you realize, ooh, I got to make some changes to my form. So you could go over to form and maybe you're, I don't know, adding a, you know, just a quick text area that says, I don't know, maybe like notes or something. Notes. When you go back to workflow, it has saved every piece of fake data that you've entered in. And so you can continue testing from there without having to retype, you know, Nick Dual, Nick at Droplet, Meadow Elementary, and so on.
Okay.
So that's it. When you're ready to publish, in this case, what we'll do is hit save. You could then just hit this publish button. Now, the way this works is it says two things happen when publishing. The version is locked, meaning you can't make any more changes to this version. All submissions created once you publish will experience this new version of the form. So if I hit publish, you'll see that this little purple kind of banner appears at the bottom. If I ever want to make edits to this, all I have to do is create a new draft, which I can do here where it said publish, down here where it said publish, or you could do it from here, new draft. So we got it kind of everywhere. Probably the easiest place to do it is just to create a new draft. And now what you'll notice is it puts in a new draft here. Version 1 was published back here, but now I'm working on a separate draft. So I can go and make changes without fear that anybody is going to run into these changes prematurely when they go to fill out a reimbursement form. And then when I'm
And
done
then-
with making edits, I can publish that too.
So when you publish, if you make edits and you publish a new version,
Yep.
does the old version just disappear as far as?
Well, here, I'll show you. So I'm going to publish this, gives me the same notice. I now have, if you look, now I'm on version 2.
Mhm.
If I ever really wanted to revert to version 1, I
Okay.
can. I click open here. This brings me version 1. And then to make this the latest published version, what I just do simply is make a new draft of version 1 and then immediately publish that. And then it
Got
makes
it.
essentially what I had from version 1 as version 3.
Okay.
Now here I go. I've got version 3 there. And so you can kind of scroll down and see the history. You have no limit to the
Okay.
number of versions as you tweak and adjust and get feedback from people in Vacaville. You're gonna be making versions probably left and right. But the good news is you don't have to make versions in order to see what it's going to look like. You can use this workflow test panel to help you with that.
Okay.
So that's it. And I think we're right on time too. How are you feeling? Were there areas that you feel like you wanted and didn't get, or were there?
We literally knew nothing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
nice. And is
You can
that
ask
still...
Broccoli all about it. He'll tell you what it's like working with us. Yeah. So, yeah, we knew nothing. So we'll try this out and see how we do.
Yeah. I do want to, I want to show you one other thing before we hop off, and that's we have a support website that has some training videos in it. You obviously signed up for live training, so you probably have been here. We also have something called open office hours, which you might have been to. This is
But we're scheduled next week.
perfect. But really what I wanted to show you is that there's all sorts of materials here. So let's say we were, you're interested in, how do I test my workflow? Well, here's a whole visual article about how to actually test your workflow, step-by-step guides. So if you ever get stuck, I really can't recommend support.droplet.io.
Okay.
There's a lot of good places or a lot of good things within here